Violent protests erupt over government job quota system in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, a country with a rich history of political activism and social movements, is again in the throes of intense civil unrest. The catalyst for this upheaval is the controversial quota system for government jobs, a long-standing policy that has now become the focal point of widespread student protests and violent confrontations. This news explainer delves into the complexities of the situation, examining the roots of the conflict, its rapid escalation, and the far-reaching implications for Bangladesh's society and governance. The spark that ignited the flames. At the heart of the current crisis lies Bangladesh's quota system for government jobs, a policy implemented in the aftermath of the country's 1971 Liberation War. This system, designed to provide preferential treatment to certain groups, allocates public sector positions as follows: 30% for descendants of freedom fighters, 10% for women, 10% for economically backward districts, 5% for indigenous communities. The remaining 45% of positions are open to general candidates. While the intention behind this policy was to ensure representation and opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups, it has become a source of growing frustration for many Bangladeshis, particularly students and young job seekers. The protests initially began as peaceful demonstrations led by university students who argue that the quota system unfairly limits opportunities for qualified candidates who do not fall into the reserved categories. They contend that the policy, now over 4 decades old, is outdated and fails to address the current socio-economic realities of Bangladesh. The students' primary demand was a reform of the quota system to create a more equitable distribution of government jobs based on merit. From peaceful protests to violent clashes. What started as peaceful student rallies quickly escalated into violent confrontations between protesters and law enforcement. The turning point came when demonstrators, frustrated by the lack of government response to their demands, began to employ more aggressive tactics. Key events in this escalation include: 1. Students barricading major roads in Dhaka, disrupting traffic and daily life in the capital. 2. Clashes between protesters and police, with law enforcement using rubber bullets, tear gas, and noise grenades to disperse crowds. 3. The shocking burning of the Bangladesh Television (BTV) building, a powerful symbol of state media control. 4. Attacks on police vehicles and widespread destruction of public property. The violence reached a critical point when protesters overwhelmed riot police and chased them to the BTV headquarters in Dhaka. The subsequent burning of the channel's reception building and several parked vehicles marked a significant escalation in the conflict. This act not only demonstrated the intensity of the students' anger but also highlighted the government's inability to maintain control over the situation. Government response and its consequences. Faced with rapidly spreading unrest, the Bangladesh government has taken a series of drastic measures in an attempt to regain control. 1. Border Guard Bangladesh personnel are deployed across the country, including in the capital. 2. Shutdown of metro stations in Dhaka to limit protesters' mobility. 3. Implement a near-total internet blackout to curb the spread of information and prevent further mobilization of protesters. 4. Indefinite closure of all schools and universities nationwide. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina appeared on television to condemn the violence, vowing to punish those responsible regardless of their political affiliations. However, her address failed to calm tensions, and clashes continued unabated. The government's heavy-handed approach, particularly the internet shutdown and suppression of dissent, has drawn sharp criticism from human rights organizations both domestically and internationally. Critics argue that these measures infringe on citizens' rights to freedom of expression and assembly, further exacerbating the crisis. In a bid to find a peaceful resolution, the government has offered to engage in dialogue with the protesting students. Law Minister Anisul Haq and Education Minister Mohibul Hassan Chowdhury have been tasked with facilitating these discussions. However, the situation has become more complex as protest leaders have shifted the demands from reform to the immediate and complete abolition of the quota system. Impact on daily life and society. The ongoing unrest has had a profound impact on daily life in Bangladesh, particularly in urban areas. 1. The internet shutdown has severely disrupted communication and business operations, affecting everything from e-commerce to international trade. 2. The closure of educational institutions has disrupted studies for millions of students, potentially causing long-term educational setbacks. 3. Public transportation disruptions in major cities have made commuting difficult for workers and hindered economic activities. 4. A general sense of unrest and uncertainty has permeated society, affecting social cohesion and public morale. Political implications and power dynamics. The protests present a significant challenge to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government, which has been in power since 2009. The unrest has exposed underlying tensions in Bangladesh's political landscape. 1. Opposition parties have expressed support for the protesters, seeing an opportunity to challenge the ruling Awami League's authority. 2. There are growing concerns about the potential impact of the unrest on upcoming elections and the overall stability of the democratic process in Bangladesh. 3. The government faces a delicate balancing act between addressing protesters' demands and maintaining its support base, which includes many beneficiaries of the current quota system. International concerns and economic impact. The situation in Bangladesh has attracted international attention, raising concerns on multiple fronts. 1. Human rights organizations have voiced strong criticism of the government's response, particularly regarding the use of force against protesters and the suppression of internet access. 2. There are fears about the potential economic impact of the unrest, including its effect on foreign investment and Bangladesh's reputation as a stable emerging market. 3. Regional stability is another concern, given Bangladesh's strategic importance in South Asia and its role in addressing issues such as the Rohingya refugee crisis. The road ahead, challenges and potential resolutions. As the crisis continues to unfold, both the government and protesters face difficult choices. The government's dilemma lies in balancing the need to address protesters' concerns with maintaining law and order and preserving benefits for historically advantaged groups. On the other hand, protesters must decide whether to continue their confrontational approach or engage in dialogue with the government. Potential paths to resolution could include: 1. Gradual reform of the quota system to address current socio-economic realities while still providing support to disadvantaged groups. 2. Creation of an independent committee to review and modernize job allocation processes in the public sector. 3. Increased dialogue between government officials and student leaders to find common ground and develop mutually acceptable solutions. However, the situation remains fluid and unpredictable. The coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining whether a peaceful resolution can be reached or if the unrest will continue to escalate. Conclusion. The ongoing protests in Bangladesh over the government job quota system have exposed deep-seated tensions in the country's social and political fabric. What began as student demonstrations has evolved into a broader movement challenging long-standing policies and power structures. The government's response, characterized by both attempts at dialogue and harsh crackdowns, has so far failed to quell the unrest. As Bangladesh grapples with this crisis, the outcome will likely have far-reaching implications for the country's future. The resolution of this conflict could potentially reshape Bangladesh's approach to social equity, governance, and political participation. It also serves as a stark reminder of the power of youth movements to drive social change and the challenges governments face in balancing tradition with the demands of a rapidly evolving society. The world watches as Bangladesh navigates this tumultuous period, hoping for a peaceful resolution that addresses the legitimate concerns of protesters while maintaining the stability and progress the country has achieved in recent years. The path forward remains uncertain, but the passion and determination displayed by both sides suggest that significant changes may be on the horizon for Bangladesh's political and social landscape.